Hey everybody, today I wanted to quickly cover a couple of these stories that have been going around. So today we're going to talk a little bit about George Santos and then a little bit about Joe Biden. Now, first of all, George Santos, he's been all over the media. He's the fall guy for tons of jokes. It's pretty much not fun if you're George Santos. So I will scroll through this CNN article, talks a little bit about Santos, and I'm not going to go into the specifics of what he did or what he may or may not have lied about. It does seem pretty clear, though, that he has lied about quite a bit. And first, real quick background about Santos. He got elected in New York's 3rd Congressional District, that is located on Long Island. He ran in 2020 against Tom Suozzi. He didn't even crack 40% of the vote. Now, since then, there was redistricting, but it's not like this district all of a sudden got really red. But Santos was able to win by about 8 points. So that's quite a shift in that district. So I think the issue for me is, why were we hearing about all these lies after the election and not before? Well, for me, there's really no great answer. The best I can gather is that it was not expected to be a competitive election, supposed to be a blue district. There might not have been enough money for opposition research, and almost like nobody bothered to really look into Santos at all. That's baffling to me with all the political money out there. This was not an extremely dark blue district in downtown New York City. And with all these campaign staffs and news agencies, nobody was able to look into this. I would imagine prior to the election, there were a lot of people that did not want to see a Republican win this seat, and somehow none of them were able to really look into this guy. Given the amount of things he is said to have lied about, it seems like if you looked into this guy for 2 seconds, you would have found out some stuff. It almost seems like it would have been difficult to not find out some of these lies. It doesn't really make sense that once somebody wins election, then you're going to try to dig up dirt on them. So anyway, I don't know where Santos goes from here. He's got pressure to resign, but he's apparently been given committee assignments. Seems like he's probably not going to step down, but you never know. If the pressure builds, if his own party starts to turn against him, he could end up resigning. If he doesn't resign, he's going to get a primary challenge, and this district could very likely flip back toward the Democrats, even if Santos is not on the ballot. So it's unfortunate to see someone who has lied about a lot of stuff. It can be a difficult situation if you find out someone has lied about some things, but you generally overall support where they stand on policy. So if this was a long-standing member of Congress, I could see wanting to admonish them and say that it was unethical. But if they have years of an established record following these lies, then yeah, it can be hard to want to have somebody step down. But I think Santos, he wasn't even in office yet, and his lies seem to be numerous and extensive. So I think it's reasonable to want to see him step down. And if you don't want to see him step down, I don't think anybody's advocating for his lies. I think it's clearly only about political power. Republicans would want to keep that seat, and they would want to keep Santos's vote. So it's an unfortunate situation, and I will say that although Santos pretty much did this to himself, I still think all of his claims should be looked at fairly, and I don't think we should just assume that everything he says going forward is a lie and everything he has ever said is a lie. His image is probably forever tarnished, but you still want to give somebody the benefit of the doubt when you can. Now let's move on to the other story, and that is Joe Biden and the classified documents found in his home. Everybody's heard about this over and over. We all know Trump had his residence raided, and he was much more obstructive and difficult with the documents he was holding. So then just a few months later, to find out that Biden was sort of doing something very, very similar, if not the same, well, I think that's a pretty stunning coincidence. So again, a lot of people on both sides try to qualify it differently. They say, well, Trump was completely obstructive, so his was way worse. And other people say, well, Biden was only the vice president, so that has to be worse. But for me, there's 2 takeaways from it. Number one, this was apparently known before the midterm election, but it didn't come out until after the midterms, and then subsequently there were further revelations even after that. But having this not exposed before the midterms, that to me is outrageous. That would have had to cause Biden a little bit of damage in those midterms. So to not get this out there before that, and then to not be outraged after the fact, that does seem like something Trump would have loved to have happen, where damaging information comes out after the midterm instead of before. But given that it benefited Biden, it does seem highly unfair and favorable to Biden, and everybody should think that's a problem. Now, the other thing is the hypocrisy of it all. Of course, Republicans were kind of against Trump. Some of them were in defense of Trump when the documents were found. And it's understandably a tough call when your own side does something wrong. You want to try to rationalize it to some extent. But the media did not waste any time thinking this was one of the worst things ever, wondering what was on those documents, who had access to them. considering national security could be at risk, is basically one of the biggest blunders ever, and then plus Trump being combative about it. It didn't seem like you could put too much spin on this to take away Trump's wrongdoing. But then a few months later, when we found out Biden basically did the same thing, I understand it was aside from the obstructive nature, but the core issue is keeping the classified documents. Then everybody starts to backpedal on their previous stances. Of course, Republicans, they're going to vociferously want to go after Joe Biden, even if he was more forthcoming about it. They saw Trump's house get raided. They know the media had a field day going after Trump, coming up with any kind of accusation they wanted. So now they want to return some of that back at Joe Biden. And then Democrats, on the other hand, it seems like there is some admission that this was a bad move for Biden. It's certainly a bad look at the very minimum. But then there also is a lot of establishment media just constantly comparing it to Donald Trump and using Trump as a way to downplay what Joe Biden is doing. Instead of them saying both of them had classified documents, and that's the main problem. It seems like what I hear is Trump is worse, and let's focus on that. Personally, I didn't think either of these stories were really especially notable. Wasn't really all that interested in a few documents lying around somebody's house. I would think if they were extremely important, this would have been known way before it was known. The bigger takeaway again for me is the media and the hypocrisy and all the various spins and rationalizations people put on their own camps. But maybe I'm looking at it wrong, and both of these are actually very serious. Classified documents? Who knows? Maybe there is some kind of dangerous information on there. But that's not really what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about how I see it covered in the media. And I don't know where it goes from here, but clearly Biden has no leverage to accuse Trump of the same thing he was doing. And I don't know how much this is going to affect Biden. We just had the midterms. By the time there's another election, this might be super old news, but I'm sure Trump will keep bringing it up, even if he does have his own document situation. So we'll see if it has any staying power, if any more develops. Maybe they find even more documents. I'm sure the Republican House is definitely going to investigate this, just like the Democrats would if the shoe were on the other foot. So anyway, that's a little bit about George Santos, as well as the Biden document story. And I think the bottom line is both of these stories, they really illustrate why most people just hate politics and hate politicians. But anyway, let me know what you think of either of these two stories. What do you think of George Santos? What do you think about the Biden documents or the Trump documents? Let me know down below. And on your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next video.